It's another European Grand Prix, as the fourth one was, but this is the 1997 event in Jerez, which of course to date sealed the last World Championship day for Williams, Jacques Villeneuve's title victory, and it was a race that I was present at. Again, coming from number 2 into number 1, Juan Pablo was a part of that, because we're now going a few months later into 97, by which stage Williams had agreed we want a big change of strategy and philosophy for junior drivers, test drivers for 1998, and that's going to be a physical exercise after the season and through the winter. And I think at that race I was sort of given permission to go and officially make the offer to Juan Pablo. We want basically to engage you in this program, to come testing with us in this winter. So the car that's hopefully about to win the World Championship, it's yours for some winter tests. And I did. So that was a big thrill for me. It was the first time I'd ever been given the freedom to be involved in choosing who could drive our cars. And Juan Pablo duly won that race, driving for Helmut Marko's F3000 team. But it was really, of course, about the way that now, I don't need to go into the detail of the race. We know how Jacques won it, but I'm very close to Jacques. He's a very, very good friend. He's been very supportive of me. We speak on the phone quite often, the latest being only a couple of days ago. And I still don't think people fully realise how good the guy actually was. Because his career sort of was a bit upside down. The best part of his career came immediately, and it was over after a couple of years, really. And the rest of his F1 career never really lived up to his rookie season or his championship season, through no fault of his own. The cars, the Williams of 98, the BARs, the Saubers, they just were not cars. They were occasional podium cars, really. That's what he had after his World Championship. But if you look at the 4 years that concluded with 97, 1994, IndyCar Rookie of the Year, in the year that Penske just completely turned IndyCar upside down with that car and that special Mercedes engine, to finish second in the Indy 500 and be one of only 3 drivers, the only rookie to win a race in Reynard's first year, of course. Then 1995, IndyCar champion, won the Indy 500 with a 2-lap penalty. So essentially what your crew chief says you early in the race is, right, Jacques, to win this race, it's a 200-lap race. You've got to drive 202 laps. All your rivals have only got to do 200. And somehow we've got to find a way to make it work through strategy and use of safety cars, and they did it, and they won. But really, for me, there's a few details personal to me about more to the point, the Sunday afternoon in Jerez. So I wanted to go and watch at the first corner. So I went, and I remember I went and watched the first 9 laps of that race at the first corner. You could go, the F3000 teams had exited, so it's quite clear to get there. And you could actually stand on the empty flatbeds of Bernie's TV truck. So we watched the first 9 laps there. And of course, Michael got ahead of us, and Frentzen and the sister Williams got ahead of Jacques. And for the first 9 laps, it was like, it's not lost, but Michael seems to be in control. He's inching on us right now. He's just inching away from us. And I remember after 9 laps, walking back to the pits, getting into the paddock, and the avenue between the motorhomes and the trucks, just a ghost town. Nobody there, because it's such an intense race. I turned down the avenue, therefore, to the left, created by the Williams trucks. And there was this figure, on tiptoes, like this, looking into the back of the Williams garage, down that sort of avenue we created as our garage entry. I thought, that's Ron Dennis. And there was Ron Dennis in full McLaren uniform, which probably why I was at the back of the garage, not the front. And I walked down, and he saw me, and he grabbed me, and he put his hand on my shoulder, and he just shouted at me. He said, "You need to tell your father now, this doesn't work if Frentzen doesn't let Hakkinen through. Go now." And I was like, what? He said, "Doesn't matter, he'll understand what I mean." It almost pushed me into the garage. So running in there was a sea of people around Dad, absolute sea of people, some standing, some kneeling, all to get a view of his monitors. And I was trying to be polite for about 3 seconds. Then I sort of remembered the importance of the message. I think I pushed people out the way. I literally just pushed them, and then I gave Dad the message, and that was it. And so I kind of played a very small part in sort of what we all know is going on, and others have spoken about it. People from the McLaren side have spoken about it, sort of what was agreed between my father Patrick and Ron for their teams going into that race. And then after the race, we were all pretty euphoric in the way that Jacques had won the championship. And then my father called me over, and he said, "Do you know Ralf Schumacher?" And I said, "No, I don't." And he said, "Well, I need you to go and find him and introduce yourself to him. I've got a message." And I said, "What's that?" And he said, "Look, I know he probably wanted his brother to win, but I just wanted to say thank you, because I see it as being exceptionally sporting that when first Michael and then Jacques came up to lap you, he would have clearly known what was going on. He made it as easy for Jacques as he did for Michael. And I always want to say thank you to people who go out of their way to be sporting to us, because he actually went out of his way to not interfere with that race. And I'm sure his heart probably wanted him to, but his sort of head said. And I gave Ralph the message. I was a bit nervous. Maybe, just maybe, that was sort of subconsciously the very first sort of brick in the wall of Ralf Schumacher becoming a Williams driver. But a year later on that date, he was announced as a Williams driver. But it's just something that many people don't sort of look at my father in terms of how he is about his racing. He is just he is honesty, and his honesty and integrity, and the recognition of that has been so important to him across his racing teams, his people, and it really was something that, it was a nice little moment. And I remember about 2 hours after this race in Jerez 97, because Jacques and I got along very well. I hadn't actually seen him yet to sort of congratulate him. I'd passed on my father's personal, because my father didn't engage with the drivers too much in the hour before the race. It didn't go to the grid, of course, so I passed on what was my father's personal message of best of luck going into the race. He said, can you go and find Jacques and tell him? And he actually said, I remember it very clearly, and I reminded Jacques of this. I remember about half an hour before the pit lane opened in Jerez 97, Dad said to me, so go and find Jacques, tell him that I love him, and I know he's going to do this. That was and I went and found Jacques in the change room, and he said, tell him I love him and tell him he's going to do this. That's what my father asked me to pass on to Jacques, and Jacques has remembered that. I think we spoke about it about 6 months ago or something. So, but then about 2 hours after the race, I hadn't seen him. And I asked somebody, where's Jacques? And they said he's in the Rothmans motorhome. Yeah. And in those days, there literally were motorhomes. So the back room would be like sort of a U-shaped sofa with a table. So I kind of went in there, and it was Jacques, Craig Pollock, and one friend of theirs, and they were all a bit, and I just gave him a hug, and I literally turned around and said, hey, what are you doing? And I said, well, look, I'm just leaving you. Come in, hang out with us. So we're sitting in there for about 10 minutes, and drinks start coming in, and Jacques very merry. There's a knock on the door from a Rothmans person, and this person says, Jacques, excuse me, Michael's here, he'd like to see you. Yeah. So, okay. So all of a sudden, into the back, so already there's 4 of us in this little room. Into the back of the room came Michael and Corinna Schumacher, about sort of 2 hours after this Jerez 97 race, and it was one of the most sweetest moments. They were just laughing and joking with each other. Michael was so complimentary to us, saying, he did a great season. It was a good race. It was a tough race. And Jacques was there looking a little bit disheveled, t-shirt hanging out, baseball cap that he had been wearing on the floor, and he was like, hey, you can take your hat off and say, Michael, perfect Ferrari cap, perfect 180 degrees, and he was like, no, I'm okay, yeah, you come on, take your hat off and stuff like this. And they were there for about 20 minutes, and they were just both the Schumachers, they were just so sweet, and it was just a really and it's just pretty special just to be in the right place at the right time to share that moment, because all weekend they've been going at it. And now one of them's won, one of them hasn't, and just to be in that room for 20 minutes with them before Michael got up and left. But it was just so friendly, just two racers, one had won, one hadn't, and it was just, I can't remember every word that was said. I can't remember too many words that were said, but it was more just, and actually, Michael seemed happy for Jacques. He just seemed happy for him. It was just like, we have to really tear each other to pieces on the track when we get the chance, or really push each other to the limit when we get the chance. But it's racing, and here we are. You've won, I haven't, and I'm happy for you, and I'll try and get it off you next year, sort of thing.